Hello there! Welcome to my channel. This particular video is one of two parts, both being released at the same time, to cover all the functionality, or as much as possible, of the Boox Note Air 4C. I call that my visual tour. It's not really meant to be a review, it's meant more about a demonstration of all the functionality that's available on the device. Because there's so much material to cover, and I try to put as many chapters in as possible for easy reference, I'm splitting this into those two pieces. Piece 1, which is this video, is focused on the note-taking app as well as the system UI. Part 2 has a focus on the Reader app, which is known as NeoReader, as well as the system settings and other apps that are available natively on the device. So that's how we've kind of split that out. I'm using front cold lighting on full power for all the demonstrations. I just thought that was the best way to be able to highlight the screen in the video process and not have to deal with shadows and what have you. So that was the reason behind that. And then finally, even though I'm covering a lot of territory in these videos, there's just too much material to go over everything. And there'll be times in the videos where I just simply gloss over certain menus and says, here it is, and then move on to the next thing. So if you have any questions about that, about some of those details, go ahead and put those in the comments, and I'll try to go back and either respond to those comments or respond in a future video if appropriate. But anyway, so having said all that, let's just get right into it because we got a lot of ground to cover. Here we go. So we're going to start the tour with the home screen, and this is a new home screen for the Note Air series. However, this is something that we have seen before in some of the Boox tab devices. So the UI isn't new, but it is new for this particular product line. We're going to start on the leftmost screen, and you can see the little icon there. And this is basically what they call Smart Assistant. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And essentially, it's just a collection of widgets. So you've got this search bar, which whatever you type in there will then take you to a web browser to do an internet search. You've got a quick launcher where you can select the apps that you want. We can go ahead and edit that. And you can see we can get rid of the Kindle app and add in the AI app or whatever. If we add in more apps so that there's an additional row, then when we come back, it will then go on to a second row. We also have a library widget, which basically we can click on any of these documents in the library and it'll take us straight into that using the NeoReader application. And we can look at all documents by clicking on there. There is a memo within the calendar app, and that's displayed in this widget. And then this widget has the Notes app similar to Documents. If I click on either of these, it will take me straight into that particular notebook, or I can click on all. So these are the 4 or 5 default widgets that are available. If I click on this little plus icon, then there could be a couple additional ones. There are Bookstore Promotion, where they have the ability to download EPUB books for free, and then a reading statistics, which tracks your reading only specific to the NeoReader application. So let's go ahead and go back into that, and you can see now suddenly the widgets go down below the screen. So if I scroll, it will scroll up accordingly. I can also get rid of the widgets and simplify the screen like so. And so now all we'll have is the search bar, which you can't get rid of, and the quick launcher. This whole page, this whole Smart Assistant page, can be turned off in the Settings tab. So this is optional, but it will come on as default when you first boot up the device. If we look at the rest of the UI, we just see a combination of widgets, here again for the library and for notes and applications. This is basically what it looks like when you first get your device, although the notes and library will be empty. And then as you add new applications, it will automatically add over here, like so. You can add additional files, or apps rather, in the tray. So if I go ahead and long press this AI assistant, I can drag it down. And we'll put the gallery app in there as well. So you can fill in the bottom row into this tray, and this tray will carry forward onto subsequent pages as well. You'll notice that if you long press on an application, a menu will come up. This one says you can add to group. So if you click on that, You can either add to the existing folder, which is called Tool, or you can create a new group, which is, again, much like a folder. There we can see an example of a folder that's already created. It has a few tools in it, and then you can add any application you want into that folder. If we long press another application, we'll notice there's other settings available. So we have a setting to manage. And this basically goes into some management specific to that application. For example, notifications, permissions, how it's handling storage. You get some statistics on its power. And then there's some other settings here as well. You can also force stop the application. And then we also have the ability to optimize, and which isn't applicable to that. Let's go ahead and pick on something like the Play Store. There we go. And here there's a number of settings that you can select. You can change your DPI. You've got a couple toggles here for making things a little bolder, eliminating font aliasing rather. And then you can turn on full refresh when switching pages. You can do cloud configuration, which basically syncs your application settings to the cloud. You can reset to default. And then there's this thing called the master switch, which turns off app optimization. So you can notice that everything is now shaded when you turn that off. There's also the ability to kind of play around a little bit with some of the color settings around text and background. And then there's some additional toggles about staying alive in the background, but of course that will have a penalty on your battery consumption. You can try to, if you go landscape or portrait, this can force the application to follow suit. And then you've got the scroll distance. And then here we have the option set on to remove the startup animation, which allows for a quicker startup of the device. So a lot of toggles that are available when that feature is available. Now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to go on to this next page. And if we long press on the page, you can see we have some options. We can go into settings, and that's just a shortcut right into the settings of the device. We can click on widgets. And there's a number of widgets we can pick. There's some library widgets, recent launchers, a number of those, another search bar. These are switches. So instead of bringing the drop-down bar and clicking on some of the switches, you can put that onto your home screen as a widget. You've got you can turn to lock screen with one click. There's a notes widget. Your Onyx account can be displayed. Got a couple calendar memo widgets, a clock, and then finally a couple music player widgets here as well. Again, if we long press, we can get rid of the widget simply by clicking on the minus sign there. Lastly, let's go ahead and take one of our applications and just drag it over to here, let's say. And let's say we want to tidy it up a little bit. If we long press on the screen, our final option is icon alignment. We'll click on that, and you can see how it kind of makes things a little prettier as a result. Let's get rid of the widget and do icon alignment again. And again, it consolidates the applications. Okay, so our attention turns to the drop-down tray. So if I take my finger and I swipe from the upper right corner, you get this control center. So taking it from the top, there is this little pen icon, which I'll click on there. And this allows you to basically identify what toggles you want to put in the control center. Right now, virtually everything is included except for this one toggle. So I'm going to go ahead and long press that toggle and move it over. And now everything's included. If I want to go back to the default settings, I can click on the reset button and it would return back what was originally below the line. Let's go ahead and move screencast back. We'll be looking at that later. And we'll get out of editing. This icon here literally just takes you into the settings, so we'll be exploring that later. There's a couple toggles here on top. There is your Wi-Fi toggle and your Bluetooth toggle. The fact that it's black, it means that it's on, so I can just click on this and it turns Wi-Fi off. Bluetooth allows you to connect to audio Bluetooth devices like a speaker or earbuds or a Bluetooth keyboard, and we'll show that in our next video. But for now, I'll just turn Wi-Fi back on. And we'll just walk through some of these shortcuts. You'll notice there's 2 pages of toggles. Okay, so we're going to start with these toggles here. And we'll start with the E-Ink Center, and this is very contextual. So depending on whether you're in the system UI or an application, will depend on what options are available. We're currently in the system UI, so let's see what we've got. So first off, we have a couple default color modes. We have optimal, vivid, and custom. And if we click on custom, there are some additional toggles as well, like dark color enhancement, vividness enhancement, and color brightness, just to show off dark color enhancement, which I think is one of the definitely the more pronounced toggles. If we go all the way to the top, notice how the writing on this image is barely visible. But if we go back to the reset value, like so, you can see it better. So that's a great example of dark toggle in action. You can select optimize. All that is specific to applications because we're in the system tray. That's why there's a line through it. And you notice we have high contrast on. Take a look at the words like Neo Browser and Dictionary. Oops, I have to go into, here we go. So we're in balance mode. Let's click on that. And notice how they got lighter. And now they're darker again. Down below, there are 4 refresh modes. Sometimes you'll see a 5th called a Regal. Regal and HD have very similar behaviors in that they tend to focus more on image quality. They'll flash the screen more in terms of getting rid of ghosting. Balanced, fast, and ultra fast are modes that are a little less flashing. They're a little more responsive. You'd use these to scroll, for example, but you do get more ghosting as a result of that. And you do have descriptions of what the different modes are intended for down below. The modes also have the ability to go into a little bit more detail. And this actually screen will come up regardless of what mode you're in. You've got a toggle for HD and Regal here. And here you have a toggle for the other modes, balance, fast, and ultra fast. And I won't go into all the details of what the modes are, but you can see them there. Okay, let's go into an application. I'm going to go into Google News. We're going to go ahead and do this drop-down bar and do E-Ink Center here. So we still see the same color modes. You see the same refresh modes. And I've picked balance because it allows nice scrolling of the image. If I go to HD mode, you'll notice that the image will look better, but it's a little choppier as we scroll. But you'll also notice that we have the ability to now optimize. Let's go ahead and click on that. There's a number of features here, and we saw those earlier in the tour. So this is the same menu we saw earlier, so I won't go into the detail of it, but those are your options there. Okay, as we continue through the control center, we go to rotate, which is pretty self-explanatory. We have the ability to either auto-rotate. You can auto-rotate only vertically, which means the orientation will either be like it is, or it will go the opposite direction, or you can only auto-rotate horizontally, which will go this way or this way. You can also rotate manually and choose by pressing on one of the T's what your orientation is. So let's go ahead and flip it. There you go. And then let's go ahead. Oops, that's right. Forgot we did flip it. Let's get out of there. Rotate, and let's flip it back like so. Okay. We do have a button for feedback. This is where you can send feedback directly to the folks at Boox. And if we click on this hamburger over here, then it'll take you to the FAQ, and you can also see your feedback history. There's the option to create what's called a NaviBall, and this is pretty sophisticated. If you click on this, let's get out, you notice there's this little ball down below. I'm going to hard press this and drag it to the center. And let's click on it, and then it fans out, and there's just a number of features that are available. Let's go ahead and go into the settings of the NaviBall. Here we go. Let's see if we can collapse that. So basically, first off, you can do this toggle to enable it like we just did in the drop-down bar. You can change the button styles. So instead of fan shape, for example, you can do like a horizontal. Let's go ahead and take a look at that, like so. And there's also the option for vertical. You can change the opacity or the size. Let's go ahead and play with that size. Let's go to 200, for example, or 150 rather. See, the buttons are much larger, and it can't all fit, so I think it defaulted back to a fan style. And then there's some additional settings here as well, which you can see on the screen. You have the ability to customize each button. So you can click on the button itself, and then here is one of 3 pages of items that you can have that button perform. We'll go ahead and that's page 2 and page 3. So just a tremendous ability to customize your shortcut buttons. One other thing to note, if we click on that again, you can always pick none. So you can actually go through, instead of having 9 things present, you can have 1 or anything less than 9 or less. So it's very customizable. And if there's a particular type of shortcuts that you want, that's you can set it up that way. Now you'll notice there's these little pins. Let's go ahead and click on the pin. And now we have a button that's independent of the NaviBall. So let's go ahead and move that up. And now I can click on this to refresh my screen at any time. And of course I can move this anywhere I want. So instead of having a swipe gesture to refresh the screen, you can have this little button available to do that at any time, and all the buttons function that way. So it's a very powerful shortcut button. One last thing I'll show, if you click on it, you do have this little icon over here, and we'll see this icon repeated in a number of the applications. And what this icon does is it mounts the item to the side of the screen. Let's go ahead and click on that. And there's an example of what that one looks like. Most items attach to the screen with a tab, but the NaviBall is this little half circle. Okay, so to turn off the NaviBall, we'll go ahead and deselect that. There's another toggle for AI Assistant. This literally just takes you into the AI app. And we'll go over that application later, but it's basically just a shortcut to that place. Freemark is interesting. If we click on this, we have this window that comes up, and whatever is on the screen, you can now write onto that screen and then save it as an image. And in addition to that, you can actually insert it into a notebook as well. So this is a way of basically doing annotations on whatever it is that you're looking at, even if it's within an application, and then saving it, and then you can collect them either as singular images, and there's the path for that, or you can collect them in a notebook. So it's a pretty cool feature. Very similar to global handwriting, if you're familiar with that function on other devices. There's a Quicknote function, and this basically just takes you right into a notebook. And then there's a kids mode. We'll see that in the settings and what's involved in that, but basically it involves limitations on when the device can be used. It has some tracking and a couple other features as well. This is it's called Bookstrap Screen Mirroring, but essentially what this is you are connecting to a web browser, and when you make that connection, if you're on the same Wi-Fi network, in this case it's little BNet, then what you have on the screen will be displayed in your browser, and it'll be displayed in full color. Then we have split screen mode. So if you click on that, we have the ability to go horizontal or vertical. You can also change the orientation. Let's go ahead and go horizontal. Let's go ahead and actually go into an application. Might be a better way to do that. Split screen. Okay, and what we see here is we're actually now we've got the app in one side of the screen. On the other side of the screen, we have a couple options here. So right now, it's defaulting to the library. So these are documents in my library. But we can also click on this icon, and now we've got our notebooks listed here. You can see you can scroll through the different pages of notebooks. or create a new notebook. So if I wanted to take notes, for example, on Google News, I could have a side-by-side and do it that way. Or I can put a second app on this side of the screen, and all the apps that are available are listed here. So for example, I could have a calculator. And now I've got the two sides. You can see you can resize accordingly or go full screen. So that's split screen. You can do a screenshot. There's actually two versions. There's screenshot and scrolling screenshot. So the difference is if I go into an app like Google News and I want to do a screenshot, it's going to take a picture of what you see on the screen. There we go. And now we have the ability, we can delete it. We can say we're good with it and save it. We can edit it, do OCR on it, export as a PDF or share it. Let's go ahead and delete it. But there's also the ability to do a scrolling screenshot. So now it's going to scroll all the way to the bottom. And there it is. Obviously, that was probably way too big. But if you had a smaller web page, it would capture everything in one screenshot. Go ahead and get out of that and delete it. Okay, we're going on the second page. You can do a full refresh here. Pretty straightforward. You can do screen recording. So you click on this, it'll literally start recording anything that you do on the device. And when you deselect it, then it'll stop the recording, and that recording is available for playback on the device. Currently, it's allowing for hand gestures. If I click on this icon, that's disabled. But it's not working to scroll the page. But if I go back and I allow hand touch, I can scroll again. You can mute notifications so you don't hear them. You can go on to do not disturb so they won't show up at all. You can turn your location on and off, pretty straightforward. You have a hotspot toggle if you want to use this device for tethering or a hotspot. You have airplane mode. Bookstrap is set off, but if I click on that, I can connect to and download, receive, or send files from the device to the Bookstrap application. And that application can either be a desktop application or it can be run through a web browser as well. So for example, to get documents on to this device, I used my computer, went on to the web page, loaded all the files I wanted, turned this on, and then sent them over. So you can use it for that purpose. Then there's this screencast icon, very similar to screen mirroring. The difference being in screen mirroring, we were basically going to another computer that had a web browser that was on the same Wi-Fi network. In this particular case, for screencast, it casts to a device that can receive it, like a Google Chromecast, for example, would be an example of a device that would receive it and then would display it on whatever that receiving device was connected to, like a TV, for example. Then we've got this little slider down here. So for the sounds, remember the speakers are over here on the sides. This is basically how loud the speakers are. And then you can mute it by clicking on that button there. This is for front lighting. We're on full cold front lighting. We can toggle the temperature here on the bottom toggle. Or we can turn it off by clicking on those icons. Okay, so our attention turns to the note-taking app, and there's a number of ways to get into that application. We can click on this widget here and go into a specific notebook or we can click on the app icon. We'll go ahead and do that. And that takes us to this view, which is basically all of your documents listed. And we've got a couple folders here, and then these are all notebook files. There's different ways of viewing the files. If I click on this little icon down below, we can go into kind of a smaller icon with a little more details of the file. If I click on this one more time, you get into a very detailed listing, which have your folders on top, and then you've got your notebooks here on the side. You can create a new document by clicking on this icon. If you double tap, that immediately goes into Quicknotes. Quicknotes is a way of going right into a file. You don't select the template. You can select a template later, as we'll see, but it defaults, I think, to whatever your last template was that was used. Alternately, if you create a handwritten note, then you have this option to select your templates. And there's a number of templates to choose. Let's kind of walk through that. So here's a few here under General. Then if we go over to Work, those are the ones there. I like to use lines as an example. Study, there's a few there. Other. A lot of times these are used as covers. And then you can customize. You can bring in either a PDF or a PNG file as long as it's the right dimensions, and you can use that as a template. We'll see an example of that later on in this demonstration. So the difference between a handwritten note and a quick note is the quick note immediately gets you in without selecting a template, and the handwritten note, you select a template. Text notes are different. This is basically, and it's got its own templates. So there's some reading notes, there's a to-do list, a blank, a couple of reports, and so on. And we'll just go ahead and select the to-do list, for example. And then you're typing, either using the on-screen keyboard or a Bluetooth keyboard. And the options when you do a document are different than the options that you do a notebook. And we'll get back to that a bit later, but just want to show that is different from other notebooks. And then finally, there is this from local file. And I'll show an example of that. Let's go ahead and click on that. And now we get to basically attach a file, and it lists all your files. I have this PDF file, which is a planner with links in it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Click on OK. And now the planner itself is the template. So let me go ahead and swipe to the next page. I can rate like so. And I can also use the links. So if I click on this Wednesday, it takes me to Wednesday. If I click on notes, it takes me to the notes section. And then I can go back to the beginning again. There we go. So this is an example of how you can put a PDF with links and insert it as a template into your notebook item. So let's go ahead and get out of here. Finally, to kind of finish the view here, you do have, this is all notebooks and documents. This is only annotations that you do in the reading app. So those annotations will end up here. This icon is for favorite. So any document you can select as a favorite. So I can go ahead and deselect that, see it goes away. If I go ahead and go over here and say pen styles, then that would then show up then as a favorite. And then most recent files are selected here. If we go back to our general view, we go over here to the right, there are sync options. So this basically is syncing to the Boox cloud. So if I click on that, it will trigger a sync. Let's go ahead and do that. See that in action. It'll do that in the background, although it won't take very long because most of the files have already been synced. And you can see that when these icons turn into a check mark, that will indicate that it has been synced to the cloud. So there's an example right there. And it'll just keep doing that as we go along. If we click on the magnifying glass, this is the search functionality. And it's pretty powerful. So this is going to look across all files, and you can have it also look into all folders as well. And it can look for a number of things. It can look for the titles of the files, and it can look at handwriting in the file. So it's going to use OCR to convert the handwriting into text it can search on, and it will identify that if it can recognize it properly. If you have text in a file, like we saw in the doc file, or even a text box in a normal note-taking file, this will look for that text. And any type of tags can be searched on here as well. One observation is handwriting search can be slow, especially if you have a lot of notebooks and a lot of pages, but the other searches are usually a little bit quicker, particularly titles and tags. Finally, we have this hamburger over here in the circle, and that takes us to settings. We can create a new folder. There is a bevy of options, as you can see here. We won't go into any much detail there. But continuing down the list, we can go into sync settings. So here you can see your Boox account. There's also a way to connect to a third-party application. We saw this when we were looking through the system settings, and those are all the possibilities that you can potentially sync to. When you do sync to those accounts, then you have the ability to sync in 3 formats, either as a vector PDF, which is editable but a larger file, a bitmap PDF, which is a smaller file but not editable, or in their native note file, which can only be read on a Boox device, but you could back them up using this process. Okay, manage in bulk basically allows you to either merge documents, export them, sync them, move them, or delete. You can either select all, as the case here, or you can go through and select individual files and perform these actions in bulk. Filter and sort is the way to how you're viewing the documents. These are the filter options here, and then the sort options are located here. So pretty powerful. And finally, we can go into the recycle bin. So if I were to delete any of these documents, it doesn't go away, it goes into the recycle bin. These documents can either be completely gotten rid of by clicking on delete. So if we select all, that becomes available. We can bring the file back if we put it here on accident, and then we can also, in one stroke, get rid of all of the documents. Okay. And those are all the general functions as it relates to the note-taking app. So why don't we go ahead and go into a notebook and we'll take a look at the functionality there. Okay, so let's continue our tour inside of a notebook and let's go over the functionality. We'll start actually at the bottom and then work our way up the spine and then across. So do it in a linear fashion. One of the things to notice is these icons currently have no text descriptors, and also not all the icons fit on the spine. The remainder fit when you click on this ellipsis. You can see some of the functions there. Now if we click on Customize Toolbar, we can see that we can move things on or off the toolbar. So this position, for example, we can click on that. It will now appear on the toolbar. If we click on it again, it comes off. I mentioned you couldn't see the text, as you can see here in the icons. I can change that just by clicking on that to on. And if you move things around, you're not happy how you had it, and you want to go back to the original, you can press the reset button, and that will go back to the defaults. If we just keep going up, we have a recorder, and this will do an audio recording in the notebook. Let's go ahead and do that. Hey, this is my audio recording, and let's stop now. And then it will save it here. You can see the length of the recording, the size, and it can be replayed at any time. Search is only search within the document, and you have the ability to search on a number of things, including annotations. This is handwriting and text, but also symbols, so we'll get back to that. You can search on tags, and then this is where an outline would appear, and we'll be coming back to that as well. Then you can put a text box in. This just allows you to type into the notebook, and you can see there's a number of formatting functions like the font, the size, the line spacing, the justification, the color of the text. You have your normal assortment of colors. You can bold, underline, italicize, copy, and paste, and then you can also delete the text box there. There we go. We have a shortcut here to sync this particular notebook. You can also zoom in and out, and there's a number of presets. There's obviously just zoom in and zoom out, and you can see kind of a summary of what that would look like, but you can also change the zoom. Let's go ahead and do the slider. And then you can see that we've zoomed into that little square there. If I move this square around, then what we're looking at will change accordingly. And we can go ahead and put that back. We do have the ability to pinch to zoom. Oh, if it was enabled. So let's go ahead and take on gestures, click on pinch to zoom, and then voila, there you go. All right. You can add a page, and then here you can do the lasso tool. Let's go ahead and write something here. We'll do lasso. And then there's a number of functions that become available. First off, you do see that there is this box with AI. AI in this case just represents turning that into text. So we'll go ahead and do that, and did a pretty good job. Let's go ahead and undo that. Like so. We'll go ahead and lasso it again. We can also turn this around. We can stretch it out proportionately. So a lot of standard options. We can turn it into a tag. So if I click on that, it will do its handwriting recognition. And I can either accept that as the tag, or I can delete it and type in whatever I want, but we'll go ahead and just accept that. And then you can see then it changes. So you see that striped pattern. That tells you that it's a tag. We could also link it to notes, a file, or a website. We can undo or redo. We can change the color. Go ahead and make that blue. We can cut, copy, and paste. Select all. And then finally, we can either flip it horizontally or vertically and delete it. So those are all the options available with the lasso tool. We have the ability to insert links as well, and there's a number of things you can insert. You can insert images, attachments, links to notes, so other pages in the note, for example. You can link to a file, to a website, or do a little timestamp. And as you can see, a lot of options available here. And there's our little timestamp right there. You have the ability to share, and we'll go ahead and just select all in this particular case. We'll share. And we have the option of renaming the share file. There's a bunch of formats that we can pick. In this case, we're limited to the PDF and book formats. We can either choose the layers we see, we'll get to that in a second, or all layers. And then we can change with the size rather. And then there's a number of ways to do the sharing. We can use a QR code. We can do the share feature, which will export that as a PDF that we can then share either in Notes, Bluetooth, file share, Kindle, or print it. So those options are available. Finally, we have the ability to export it, create another PDF, and then now we've got a document in the device that we could then do something with. You'll notice there's different view options in here. We can flip the pages. It all fits on one screen, so you won't really see the difference, but you can click on the different grid styles. If you click on this, you can jump to whatever page you want. So that's all available for share. AI is a little bit of a misnomer. It's not artificial intelligence like a chatbot or a large language model that we normally think of with AI, at least with our electronic devices. But in this particular case, it refers to a series of smart tools. We have shape perfection, lasso recognition, scribble erase, and text recognition, which we've already seen. But this will do it for the entire page as opposed to what we circled when was the case with the lasso tool. But let's go ahead and kind of play with some of these options. So we'll start with shape perfection. So I'm going to draw a triangle and hold it. And you can see that it becomes this triangle, and I can actually play with the dimensions. Let's go ahead and do a circle. Hold it. And now we've got a circle. And we can stretch it out. And so on. So that's basically shape recognition. So next, let's go do lasso recognition. So I've written something here. I'm going to just circle it. And it's automatically going to select it. So that's what lasso recognition does. So instead of me having to click on the lasso, it automatically understood it. And then you have all the functionality you would normally have with the lasso tool. The last thing I'll illustrate is the strike through erase. So strike through erase is something like this, and it will erase the text. You have the ability, as we saw earlier, to turn on or off the gestures on the document. You would turn gestures off if you found yourself accidentally triggering some of them. So that's why these options are available. We have a fill option here. And basically with the fill option, we can pick a color. And you have to find a closed object like this triangle, and it'll go ahead and fill that in for you. Let's, for fun, let's just go ahead and fill that in too. Now speaking of shapes, even though you have shape recognition, there is plenty of shapes available in the note-taking app. And if I double click on that, you can see all the different shapes that are available. There's different line styles that are available, different colors, the ability to change the line width, and you could even use shape fill automatically. So why don't we go ahead and have some fun with that. I'm going to go ahead and pick this hexagon, and we'll put this dashed line, and we'll go with this kind of sky blue color with a thicker line. If we go over here, there it is, and you can see it's already filled in, like so. And of course with this dots I can manipulate it, just like with Shape Perfection. Over here you have something called margins. And this basically allows you to take your canvas, which right now the entirety of the canvas fits on the screen. So I can extend that by moving it down that way, or moving it that way, or creating a 4x4 grid. And that can either be applied to the current page or to all pages. That takes us to layers. You'll notice right now it says layer and it says number 1. That's always the default, but you can add 4 more. Let's go ahead and do that. There you go. So you can have up to 5 layers plus your template. What a layer does essentially, and we're currently on layer 5, this is indicated there. Whoops, is it creates a layer that's distinct from all other layers. So let's say, for example, I wanted to go back to layer 1. You see the one there. I want to go ahead and clear the entire layer, or actually the current layer. There we go. And you'll notice that all the handwritten text on that layer is gone. We still have the timestamp and the recording. That remains. There are ways to remove that as well. Now we see we've replaced this layer, but we still have some objects that remain. Those have to be basically deleted manually. And you can see if I hold long press it, I can click on this delete icon to be able to delete that. The same would be true with the timestamp, but we'll leave that for now. Let's go ahead and go back to layer 5. And let's say we wanted to keep the timestamp, but we don't want to see it. I can click on this little eye icon and that goes away. Technically it's still there, but you just can't see it. You can also switch layers, or the order of the layers rather, by clicking on these arrows. You can lock a layer or delete it using those items as well. Then we have the template item, and this basically is another way to go through all the templates which we showed earlier in this video. And you can change templates either for the entire document or just for the current page. As we round the corner, you'll notice this particular icon. If you click on it, it allows you to shrink the menu. And you'll also notice that the layer itself completely adjusted to it. So if I'll go ahead and go back, the page actually shrinks to fit. So let me just show you an example. So if I put this here and we click on that, see it goes up to the upper corner as it fills the entire screen. This tray, which is basically mostly what is available on the top of the system, can be moved around. Whoops. Like so. Anywhere you want it. You can mount it to the side by clicking on that icon. You can always bring it back by clicking on that tab. There's actually a number of settings you have for this window. You can click on Customize Toolbar, and there's a bunch of things you can add to the toolbar. Again, just by clicking on it or clicking it to remove it. You also have the ability to change the size of the toolbar. We'll go ahead and make it pretty large. You can display it horizontally or vertically. And let's go ahead and take a look at what those changes have meant. So a lot of customization about what shows up there. We click on this again, we go back, and we have then an ability to get out of the file by clicking on the back arrow. That will also save the file as you leave it. We can rename the file by clicking on the name and then clicking on this pen icon. I'll go ahead and clear that out, and we'll just call this new. Then you have the ability to put in different pen styles, and there's actually a number of presets that you can put in there, up to 5. Each one can be separately set to whatever default you want, and we'll go over the different pen types. But basically, for these defaults, or quick links, I guess, you can set it to whatever brush you want, whatever color, whatever line thickness, and it will remain that way until you make changes to it, or you can delete the preset. Your eraser features are here. We saw that earlier. If I double click, I can either go with a mobile eraser and change how large of an area that will cover, a lasso eraser, a stroke eraser. You can just erase the entire layer or all layers, and then you can choose whether shapes will be erased or not, and then you can show the erasing trace. You have undo and redo here. You can switch between pages by clicking on the arrow buttons, and you can also click on the number and then basically see all your thumbnails. And again, like before, you can change the different views. Down here, here you can select all your pages if you want, and then copy or move or delete them. You also have the ability to see your outline, so we'll get to that in a second, and any tags, and we deleted our tag, so we won't see that here. Now, how do you get to the outline? Outlines are basically like tags, but instead of being specific to a word, they're specific to the page. So actually, let's do an example of both of those. So this is a tag. So I'm going to go ahead and do lasso recognition. I'm going to go ahead and click on this tag. And it got it, even though my handwriting was terrible. So I'm going to say OK. And that identifies that tag. Now let me go ahead and go to another page. And instead, we're going to do an outline marker. So I'm going to take, let's go ahead and get out of this. I'm going to go ahead and take my finger, I'm going to hold it down. And now you have the ability for either a text box, which is the same as the text box that we had down here, or we can add to outline. And we'll just say first outline. And click on OK. All right, so now let's go back to this page count and see how those show up. So here, this is the tag. Remember, it was called this is a tag. I can either click on this and it'll take me straight there, or I can go ahead and delete it. If we go to outline, remember we called that first outline. It's on page 4. If I click on this, I can either add it to a sub outline, edit or delete, or click on it to go straight to that page. So again, a tag is specific to whatever text that you attach it to, And an outline is specific to that page, and you can tell there's no visual cue that this has been outlined. You can only tell that by going on the numbers, going to outline, and then all your outline items would be listed here. Okay, let's go over a few more things before we go. First off, one clarification. This item here is actually thumbnails, so it's a preview of all of your pages in the document. And of course, we talked already about outlines and tags. I also want to note that I've added in this function to change the position. So by clicking on this, the bar can go over to the right, say if you were a left-handed writer. We'll go ahead and put that on back. And I want to delve a little bit deeper into the search functionality that we kind of went over earlier. Again, there's your tags. But if we go to this, what's called Scribble, and actually I can expand this and you can see it identifies what these different groups are. You'll notice that under Scribble, there's the ability to do a search through handwriting and text, but there's also the ability to search through these icons. And you can see there's a square and there's a star. I'm going to go ahead and click on the square. It's going to look only in this notebook. And you can see it found two instances of it. This square and this triangle both qualified for the search functionality. If I click on this little asterisk, it also finds two options, this asterisk and that star. So you can use hand-drawn images and do a search on those within a notebook. That doesn't work across notebooks. And it does use the handwriting functionality, so it can get a little slower when you have a larger document. But that functionality is available to you, and there's other icons that these will recognize as well. This isn't the entire set of them. In fact, let's go ahead, for example, and put a little circle here, and let's see what it does with that. See, it found it. And it also associated the hello with it. That's kind of interesting. So a lot of options in terms of search within a notebook. Before we leave our note-taking app, let's look a little bit deeper into what functionality is available in text notes. Handwritten notes from local file and Quicknotes all have the same general functionality, but text notes are different. We'll just go ahead and create one. We won't care too much about what's in it. So we have, instead of having the menu bar on the left and on top, we now have the menu bar just across the top. And of course the keyboard comes up because this is a typing document. So we can undo or redo. We can change the text style, which includes the font, the size, color, bold, italics, and underline, very similar to the notebook app. If we click on this body, we can have actually different heading levels for the text that we're typing. We can mess with the spacing, both horizontally and vertically. Here we have different justifications for the alignment, as well as indentation. We can create, bullet lists, and there's about 4 styles there. We can also insert, so a website, an image, or an attachment. We can do a recording, very similar, of course, to what we had in the note-taking app. Here we have a little bit of a different functionality. We have mark recognition, scribble to erase, and line break. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at those. So let's go ahead and underline it there. See, it highlighted that. Let's go ahead and undo that. Let me go ahead and do a little stroke here. Okay, so if we go from top to down, it will go ahead and create a new line. And finally, scribble to erase. Here we can look up some text or even replace it. We have the ability to sync here. It's doing that now. If we click on more, we can export the file, save it. We've got some statistics. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. So pretty basic word processing statistics, with a couple extras, like, for example, the Chinese characters. Here we have gestures, so we can, again, turn them off if we're accidentally triggering them. We can clear format, what they call sync conflict records. I do not know what that stands for, so if you want to ask me later, please put that in the comments. You can change text direction, so those are some examples there. Finally, you can customize the toolbar and basically move some of these things that are in the More section into the main toolbar. Why don't we go ahead and just dump everything in there. Didn't help us. We'd have to get rid of some things in order for them to appear like so. If we want to go back to the original, we'll go ahead and click on this and it'll return everything to the default. Okay, let's return to our pen styles here. And again, you'll notice there's 5 different brush types. There's about 16 different colors, and you have a variation in terms of the line widths that are available. So what I've done here to demonstrate that is we'll look for each pen style. We're going to start with a ballpoint pen. We're going to look at its thickness. So this is the thinnest down to the thickest. These aren't all the points in between, but it gives you a good sense of the range. Over here, you can see scribbles that connect to the name of the colors. And we've highlighted light gray and white in order to make those stand out. And you can see those there. And then if there's any type of pressure check, which is just more pressure on the pen, and if it creates a different behavior, it would be yes. In this case, it's no. So the pressure does not change how the line's drawn. And then here in tilt check, we measure going like this, and then going to the side and going like this, and seeing if that changes the line. In this case, the answer is no. So again, we're going to start off with the ballpoint pen, and you can see those attributes there. Now we've got one version of the pencil, and you can see it does have pressure and tilt sensitivity. And you can see, of course, the thickness examples and the colors and so on. There's a darker pencil. Let me explain that. So if we click on this icon, we go to pencil. There's 2 options. So we just saw the lighter one. We're now looking at the darker one. And again, you can see the thickness ranges, still pressure and tilt sensitivity, and the colors. Here is the brush pen. Again, you can see the thickness, no pressure, no tilt sensitivity. There's your colors. The pen style with thickness does have pressure sensitivity, doesn't seem to have tilt sensitivity, and there's your colors. And then we'll conclude with the marker. The marker in this case is very similar to a highlighter. You can see the thickness examples there, no pressure or tilt sensitivity as you'd expect, and then you can see how those appear writing over the colors. So those are all the pen options that are available to you in the note-taking app. So that does it for this video. Again, remember that there are 2 parts to this video, so if you're interested in additional functionality, be sure you check out that other video as well. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe. I would appreciate that. The next video in the series is going to be starting to really go into the review. So we'll do things like look at the battery tests. We'll look a little deeper in the performance of the Note Air 4C versus its predecessor, the 3C. We'll look at color swatches on the 2 to see if vividness of color has changed. And we'll do that with and without front lighting. And we'll do a Bluetooth keyboard, maybe more. And then the last video in the series will be the full review. So we're halfway, more than halfway in terms of video time. And I look forward to seeing you there.